I think every real horror fan has had at least one experience of feeling out of place when compared with quote-unquote mainstream society, but I don't think there's ever been a really good attempt to understand why it is that people like horror. Like, most horror fans are generally normal people who have pretty good reasons for enjoying horror, but what are those reasons? The real reasons, not the ones that they learn to tell people to make society leave them alone. That's what our podcast is about, interviewing people in the horror biz to find out what it is about horror that makes them happy. My name's Steve, I'm a bit of a psychology buff, and my co-host is my friend Chris, who's a horror buff, and so far we've interviewed almost 90, well, actually more than 90 people in the biz by now, and had a lot of fun with it, and wanted to share with you some highlights. In this set of excerpts, we're just going to share the fun stuff. If you want to come hear the real meat of the conversations, you can check us out on Apple, Google, or Spotify, or use the player on our website. In this set of excerpts, we're going to be talking to three authors: Lee Allen Howard, known for his books Death Perception, The Sixth Seed, and How to Tell If Your House is Haunted; four-time Bram Stoker Award winner and creative writing teacher Tim Waggoner; and six-time Bram Stoker Award winner Lisa Morton, the last two of which have literally written hundreds of things, so I'm not even going to try to tell you what to look for. Just check out their bio pages on our website or go to Wikipedia. They have plenty of stuff to check out.
They had a picture in Famous Monsters magazine, and it was one of the pictures where Reagan's head is like turned all the way backwards. And the hype of it, knowing that this was like such a big deal and looking at that and trying to imagine what it would feel like to have my head turned backwards, it's actually made me throw up. And it was just because of the anxiety of it. I did it to myself. And so I cut the picture out and got rid of it. And, yeah, because as a kid, I was like, this picture's, look what it did to me. And I told my great grandmother who was there, and she's like, well, we got to get rid of it. And I'm and at the time, even then, I'm like, you did this to yourself, you dumbass. You know that, right? But still, that happened. I'm not religious, but some of my relatives went to a Quaker church, Friends Church, in our town. And they had this was back before when you could do this, when the church would have a Halloween party in the basement. I mean, one year the pastor came dressed as Satan with this giant Satan head, and everybody thought it was hysterical. It was back when people, I don't know if that would be everywhere, but at least in my little community for that church, people didn't think that it was just fun. They didn't worry about it.
Flipping that last question around, was there ever a time in your childhood when you felt completely calm or safe or at bliss?
I went in my room, playing with, I guess they weren't exactly action figures back then. Playing with the little plastic dinosaurs and plastic army men and stuff like that, and making up stories for them. At my aunt and uncle's, it was their basement. I could go down and play. And I even had my own mad scientist lab down there, with just these little plastic juice bottles that they're washed out, and I used to pretend like I was mixing chemicals. And so just having time like that, alone with my imagination, reading books, reading comics, whatever, I always felt safe with that kind of thing. Always. The
first time that I learned that other people made quote unquote rat poison with household chemicals, that I wasn't the only kid that did that. I was just like, what?
I was terrified the whole time. And then at the very end, when the shark jumps up on the boat to eat Quint, and I'm looking at this shark, and his jaw, his lower jaw is not matching up to his upper. It's kind of sliding side to side as he's chewing. And I was like, you can see the teeth of rubber too, when they come down to bite Robert Shaw.
Oh, I know. That's one of the worst parts. You can see it bend.
Yeah. And I was like, I could not believe I was afraid of this thing for so long. And I burst out in hysterical laughter and literally fell out of my chair onto the floor of the movie theater and kept laughing. I ruined that goddamn movie for everybody in the theater. But like a lot of people around that time, suddenly I was, afraid of water, just the thought of it. My second daughter had the cord around her neck. And the doctor, our pediatrician was wild. My first daughter, when she was born, he told my wife, he said, don't push. She pushed anyway, and my daughter shot out at an angle. And I watched this doctor stop time and he just said, okay. And he reached over and just plucked her out of the air. And I was like, what the hell? Because this is a guy who's delivered 1 billion babies, but that's what it looked like to me. And then we had the same. Yep. And then we had the same doctor for the second one. And when he started to get worried, that's when I got worried. When my daughter's pulse was going down. I mean, he was going to grab a scalpel and go in to get her. And then she slipped away from the cord. But that feeling of like absolute helplessness. I remember once putting on I forget what it was. It was some slasher movie. And I fell asleep to the sweet, sweet sounds of screaming and chainsaws. When you're a horror fan, it's hard to explain to people, but stuff like that can be really comforting because it's, you don't take it seriously the same way people who don't enjoy those kind of movies do. It's different. My oldest daughter loves Halloween. One of my favorite things was when she first started watching movies as a kid, whenever the tension would get to her too much, she would like scold the main character, and she'd always give them a middle initial. She'd go, Michael J. Myers, you stop that right now. And I just thought that was so awesome, watching a way to kind of diffuse that. I thought of this after 9/11 when people on the HWA message board were like, what's the point of us writing horror? And I'm like, we don't write stuff that really deals with horror. You know that, right? We're like rodeo clowns. We stand in front of the real darkness. Seriously, we stand in front of the real darkness to distract people from it in a lot of ways. Because you're like, oh, look, here's Jason. It's not, a horrible cancer or horrible disease or a horrible car wreck or, just another person that just doesn't like you and wants to hurt you. It's this horrible force that, will come to get you because death shows up in person to get you because you're special. You get this wonderful cinematic death that, is fake and entertaining as opposed to just, being in hospice for 9 months or something.
Mm.
My dad was this crazy hunter. I mean, really obsessed with it. And we always had weird stuff around the house like deer hides. And I think when I was in first grade, there was a sitcom on the air at that time that was called It's About Time, which was about these astronauts who were stuck back in caveman days. And I wanted to be,
see where this might be going.
Yeah, as a result of that, I wanted to be a cave woman. So my mom and dad actually made me like a really insanely authentic cave woman outfit from an actual deer hide. And I remember loving that, but being kind of frustrated that I was so small I couldn't carry a wooden club. So I did have to, I had to resort to a pretend plastic wooden club, but that was probably my favorite outfit.
Doing a little Wilma Flintstone impersonation.
Yeah.
Going back to The Exorcist for a moment, you mentioned specifically the job of screenwriter. How did you land on that, considering, when you talk about movies, there's so many different, roles in movie making. How did you land on screenwriter?
Well, I actually was kind of aiming for screenwriter / director. But as I got more into things, I realized that directing maybe was not really what I wanted to do so much as just be a screenwriter. And I actually did end up working as a screenwriter for a while in the late 80s, early 90s, and it wasn't until I had a very minor amount of success at it that I realized that also was not for me. And at that point is when I made the move into fiction.
Okay.
So occasionally at Halloween, he would say, hey, do you want us to make you up as something fun for Halloween? And, when one of the world's greatest makeup artists asks you this, you're not going to say, yeah, no,
right.
no, thanks.
You say yes.
So, yeah, I did
please.
a few, let him do a few. He and his wife, Barry, did some really, really cool things on me. One year, my favorite one was the year that Twin Peaks was out, and they made me up as dead Laura Palmer.
Nice.
Which was...
In the bag?
In a bag, which I realized
okay.
after I was wrapped in the bag, I realized I was going to suffocate myself in that damn bag.
Right.
But
right. And also, so am I just going to potato sack hop everywhere today?
Yeah. That part of it was a mistake, but the face that they did was, of course, stunning.
You want to talk about dissecting The Exorcist and how they did things, and to your comment about your voice earlier today, I was watching something about just, little known facts, one of those YouTube blurb things on horror movies, and The Exorcist was in there. And apparently Nancy Reagan was voiced by a different actress who smoked 2 packs a day to get that voice.
Yeah. Mercedes McCambridge, yes. An older actress.
That is insane.
Yeah. She also claimed that she ate like raw eggs or something to get some of the gurgling sounds.
Oh, God.
I swear I've done none of that today, by the way.
That is method acting to its finest. Wow.
it's just hard to relate to that because I guess just because I didn't have a choice,
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think if you're a reader in particular, and you meet people who are not readers, it can be hard to explain to them what the joy is of reading is compared to watching something on a screen.
Yeah.
I feel personally attacked. I've read like 2 books in my lifetime. A whole 2.
Not counting school books. Silence.
Not I was coughing. I was choking on my own shock at your statement, sir. No, I read Jurassic Park because the movie looked cool, and then I wanted to read the book, and the book was, of course, better. And then Ender's Game in preparation to watch Ender's Game when it came out in theaters, and the book is always better.
Yeah.
Yep. I often chuckle when I see online, people will say, I've liked this movie and that movie and this other movie. So, what are some other movies that I would like? And then the responses are always either hit or miss. And I always think to myself, the question you need to be asking is what am I afraid of? And then find movies that deal with those topics, but, not everybody has either the time or the wherewithal to know how to dig into these kinds of things, or even if they want to.
I have to tell you that I've seen a couple of horror movies about dementia, and I didn't like them because I felt like they got a lot of it wrong.
Oh, what?
Yeah, Relic was
exactly
good,
right.
But
right, that's the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
Sorry to name drop it. I know we were trying to keep it ambiguous and nice, but I knew what you were talking about. It was good, but a bit of it was heavy-handed, I think, I
actually wrote a story in, I think it was 2nd grade, that was full of skeletons, witches, and blood, and my teacher gave it to my elementary school principal, who read it, and he was the president of the local Lions Club where we lived. And my father was also a member, and Principal Sprunger fined my father, the pastor, a dime because the pastor's son had written such a horrific story full of skeletons, witches, and blood.
Fined him? Like actually charged him money?
Yeah, and that's the first time that money exchanged hands for my fiction, but it did not end up in my pocket because I would have gone down the street and bought myself an ice cream cone at the White Cottage because they were a dime. This little elliptical slit that you could stick your tongue through there. And
okay, you know what? We have gotten these are Ben Cooper costumes. We know this now because they've come up so many times in this podcast. But I think, congrats, because I think you're the only one to unprompted bring up the tongue and the slit thing.
Oh yeah,
totally a thing with those.
I remember that, and cutting my taste buds off on that little slit.
Right? Because you have to, you're just drawn to stick your tongue through the thing, and then it gets stuck, and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then you never do that again.
Yeah.
Most people never do that again.
Present company excluded.
Yeah, and then if you wore the mask more than once, then it was like, it started to smell like candy breath, I remember one time I put on some makeup to be a zombie, and it was, I don't know, there was temper paint, something like that, something that probably shouldn't be used on your skin.
I have a feeling this is going to be another combo favorite and least costume.
Yeah, and of course I painted my face with this, and then when it dried, it kind of cracked and flaked. And then I put black stuff on my eyes, and I don't know what I put on my lips. Maybe it was black too, but it was, I was a zombie, so I had ripped clothing and things like that. And then I went out. I was 21, so I was out at the bars with that and dancing with that stuff with makeup flaking off my face onto the dance floor.
That's not as bad as I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say it stained your skin.
No, it did not.
I was thinking some kind of skin damage, yeah.
Yeah.
The few decorations that I have, they're up all year round. So.
I'm the same way. It's like, how many skulls does one need in the house?
I am
the answer is all.
Yes, I love skulls. There are skulls in just about every room. I do like the skulls for some reason. You know, anybody that's anyone has one. Just think about it. Anyone.
I mean, everybody has one. Do you mean anybody who has two?
Anybody who has one. Wait, I can't remember what I said now. That reminds me of I think it was a Ray Bradbury story about some guy realizing that on the inside of him is a skeleton. He's afraid of skeletons. Can I write a story where somebody's like really well adjusted and they look at something and they know how to tackle it? That's not me. You know?
Well, that just sounds boring.
Yeah.
Everything goes right? What? No.
Yeah. So
Joseph Campbell would not approve. There is no conflict.
Yeah. But I do try to, if my characters have some kind of a terrible, ghost or wound from their past that they need to deal with, that, I come up with some situation where they actually do deal with it. There's something deep-seated about the ideas and the things and the situations, the fears, the traumas that I've dealt with. They come out in my writing, and if they're not based on something in the past, then some of them prove true in the future, and I hope that is not the case for the bedwetter.
Or potentially any of the other things you've written about, really.
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
do you by any chance have a cursed pen of some sort? Is it maybe like a relic that makes things come true? Possessed typewriter?
I used to type on a typewriter. No, I don't have a possessed pen.
Okay.
I was gonna say, there's tying back to the monkey's paw. You wished for something, and
exactly.
So yeah, come check us out over at horrormakeshappy.com, or check out some of our other excerpts until you find someone whose interview you do want to hear.